Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Chats in the Blog Cabin. You know, the show where I invite people virtually into the blog cabin to chat about life. And today we're chatting with Heather, who wrote this book, Soul Selfie, #No Filter. And I absolutely love that. And I love the backstory behind it, why it prompted it, writing this, because you were battling with leukemia when you were writing your first book and then your second book. So Heather, welcome to the show. And before we get into the book, let's talk about who you are. So introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get to chat with you for a while. My name's Heather Carter, as you mentioned, and I'm from the West Coast originally, and now I live in Springfield, Illinois. That's a long story, but my husband was a pastor for 20 years here in Springfield, so I've done that gig before, and then now we're both working. He works in the private sector, and I'm a realtor, which is great for things like this because I can kind of taper, kind of format my day around getting to do interviews, and no one can tell me I can't do it. So it's a good role for me.
Now, I love the premise behind your book, Soul Selfie, because they're originally blog posts that you just created into a book. And I think most bloggers think that they can't do that. But what made you decide to put these blog posts while you were going through leukemia, and even after, when you're in remission, decide to put it in a book?
Well, yeah, I originally started writing just to update people on the status of my cancer. And then that morphed into a kind of a daily reading type of blog. I was in the hospital initially for 30 days. And that's a long time to do, to just talk about being sick. So instead of just talking about being sick in my body, I started reflecting on how I was sick in my soul. And that's kind of how the Soul Selfie topic or title came to be, as I just realized God was telling me that I was a full-time job and I need to put that focus back on myself, stop worrying about everybody else and what they're doing or not doing, and just focus on me. And then in doing that, it seemed to encourage other people because they knew they weren't alone in their struggles.
I know we mentioned before we came on, I told you, I'm a quarter the way through the book because I'm doing it in small nuggets. And you're like, that's the way the book was meant to be read, and not meant to be read like in a whole sitting, like a page turner. It's more like read it, sit with it, then read the next part.
Yep. And that's how I read, because my attention span's very short. So I read several daily reading books every day. So Jesus Calling and Oswald Chambers and a couple others. And my book is written similarly. It's just read 1 or 2 pages, underline it. Then the next, when you're done, with my other books, I just start them over again. And then I use a different pen to highlight or underline. And so I guess that's my hope for how people read my book as well.
Now, this is a sequel to the first Soul Selfie, right?
Yes.
So what made you decide to do a sequel?
Well, I have about 350 or so blogs that I have written since I got cancer in 2015. So my first book was the first 120 blogs, the accumulation of those. And then this next book is the next 120 blogs. And I call that kind of the aftermath, because I still battle what I call the common plagues of the heart.
And what are the common plagues of the heart?
From what I've observed and experienced, I think, there's we all struggle with anxiety and fear, resentment. That's a big one I talk about. Control, jealousy, just to name a few.
That is so true, to name a few. But I really appreciate the fact that you said, raise your hand. And the back of your book, you said, raise your hand if you suspect that you are the only one who struggles with anxiety, doubt, fear, resentment, comparison, jealousy, etc. Because a lot of times people think that they're the only ones, that they're like they're out there in an island by themselves.
Yeah. And that was, once I started posting some of the blogs where I sort of confessed, and just, I try to write in the messy. So when I'm feeling it, I try to write about it instead of how I used to do it, where I maybe was resentful or angry or controlling. And then I would get some help and talk to a few people and kind of get it get myself together
Mhm.
and then share a few months later. Now I try to write the day I'm experiencing it. So that I think that resonates with people more. They
Mhm.
feel like they're in this struggle with me. It's not like, oh, well, yeah, she was messed up, but now she's all better. I'm clearly not, if you read my book.
I love that. Clearly not.
Clearly not.
But I think the biggest compliment anybody can give you, and I know it was given to me one time when I wrote a really like emotional blog post because I'm also a blogger as well. That's where I started off as. But when people come up to tell you and say, "I'm so glad you wrote that," I thought I was the only one that felt that way.
Yeah,
That is like the biggest compliment. Have you
it
ever
is.
had things like that happen?
Oh yeah, that's really the main reason that I keep writing and posting them. I guess I write to kind of reason things out with God, but it always ends up as a public post because I start realizing that I'm not the only one who maybe needs some help in that area. And when I get feedback from my readers saying, that's exactly what I needed to
Mhm.
hear today. And I'm in the process of doing some interviews with other readers for my book, my upcoming release of my book. And that's kind of what they say is, this day I
Mhm.
needed to hear that. And thank you for sharing that. So even if there's only a few people that are saying that, that's fine with me. I'll just keep writing because everybody needs to have someone who's, kind of understanding what they're going through.
Now, have you ever had anybody come up to you and kind of criticized you, saying, "Why did you put that out here? Why did you put it out for everybody to read?"
Not so far. I'm pretty conscientious about how I write so that I can hopefully not have that issue because my book is not about for me anyway, it's not a place where I take hard stands on things. It's
Mhm.
a way of just sharing my heart and my experience, strength, and hope with other people. So, I mean, they can take it or leave it, I guess, but I don't get too opinionated. It's more about helping people feel like they're not, like you said, like they're not alone in their
Mhm.
struggles. So that's kind of hard to argue with. I mean, I am what I
Right.
am. I guess you could argue, but probably not going to get very far.
I love that. I like that. I am what I am because I remember when I wrote a very heartfelt post, somebody said you shouldn't write that for everybody to see
Mm,
because it's out there on the internet because they wanted to do their blog like it was a newsletter, newspaper article, like
mhm.
very facts. And I'm like, that's not who I am. I'm not
Right.
one of these people that regurgitate facts. I'm the one about writing about feelings as well.
Hmm. Yeah, you can't. It's harder to argue with people's feelings. I mean, you're just being honest and real.
That is so true. Now we need to take a brief commercial break, but then we'll be right back after the commercial.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Joanna, and I would like to share with you a little bit about Shores of Grace, Shores Philly. It's a ministry located in Philadelphia. The portion of Shores that I volunteer for goes into Kensington, an area greatly impacted by homelessness and addiction. And we go and we take love, food, clothing, snacks, conversation. We believe that it is a way that we can meet people right where they are and show them the love of Jesus. We have seen lives changed in big ways and in small ways, and we have built wonderful relationships with the people in the community. We have big plans, more we'd like to do, and we would appreciate any support, either through prayer or through donation. If you would like to donate, you can go to shoresofgrace.com, and in the menu, click on Donate. We just ask that you put Philly in your donation comments. Thank you.
And we are back chatting with Heather, who wrote the book Soul-Selfie, #No Filter. I'm looking through my notes because I told you before we went on that I took some notes on the thing, but I love the one where you said the 4 questions you have the readers ask themselves when they're reading the blog or when you're actually, I think it's when you're actually writing the blog as well. So let's talk about those 4 questions. Do you remember them or?
I do. I have them here. Yeah, I've had people over time suggest to me that I should write some, reflective questions for each post and maybe have a study guide. And I feel bad, but I was like, no,
No.
that is not happening because I'm terrible at thinking of questions. Like those 4 questions are really hard for me to come up with. And B, I just feel like the same questions can be asked about every single post, and then you're good to go and not overcomplicate it. So I have in the back of my book, I also have a guide if people want to use it as a book study at their home. And it's the same guide. You know, the questions are, how have I experienced, thought, or felt something similar in my life? If it's past tense, how has my attitude, belief, or thinking changed as a result? If it's a present situation or thought or belief pattern, what can I do to gain perspective, hope, or healing or celebration in it? And then who do I know that might benefit from reading this? So I encourage people, just as they're going through every blog, just to ask themselves those questions and then think, you know, oh my gosh, you know, we always do that. Who can I send it? Who needs to hear this? Or my friend so-and-so would really be encouraged by this. So pass it on to someone else.
And I love that. The number 4 was the one that really stuck with me because I'm really big about sharing other people's work and about, oh my gosh, this is great. My friend Lucy, let's just say Lucy, is going through this right now. Let me shoot this blog post over to her. Maybe it'll help her out. Right. And that's another thing I want to hit on about your little note on the back of your press release. I absolutely love that, about things that people can do to know that they're not alone. Like share your blogs via Facebook, Instagram, or directing friends to your blog site. That helps any blogger or any small business out. Write a review about your book. So anybody that grabs a book after this interview, go write a review for her. I know I'm going to. And think about opportunities that you can connect with speaking people. And like today, you're speaking here on the podcast. Order your book for your friends, and it would make a great Christmas present because Christmas is coming up. And especially if you have someone that likes to read. And then keep reading, read over and over and over again, and share, post pictures of it, right?
And the nice thing, I think the way my blog is set up is I still write every week or so. So if you go to my site, which is heathercarterwrites.com, you can sign up to get an email every time a new one is written. And because a lot of people aren't on social media, that way it'll just come in your inbox. And the other thing that I love about it is, like I said, I struggle. I have a lot of character defects and signature sins that I talk through a lot. And on my site, you can actually go to, it will say browse the archives by category. So you can click that, and then it will list all the topics that I hit on. So if you're having a particularly hard day and feeling anxious, there's a link to all the things I've written about anxiety and worry and fear and surrender and trust. All those kind of go together. So you can kind of taper or kind of choose what you need to hear that day by doing that. And then that's also an easy way to send it to someone else. So when you read something, then you can just copy that link and paste it and send it to someone that way instead of, or you can do the old fashioned way, take a picture of it in your book. But you can find all my blogs, even in my books that are from my books, are on my site.
I love that. Now, there's one story that really resonated with me, and I think it's going to resonate with everybody. Can you think about what story it might be?
Oh gosh, I don't know. You'll have to tell me which one you liked best. I've been talking to so many readers, and I love to hear what their favorite ones are.
The bike story.
The bike story about trying to give it to the kid. I still have that bike. I can't find that kid anymore. Yeah, why don't you tell them about it real quick?
It's like she saw a little boy, right, riding a pink bicycle, correct? And that he was riding it, and it was obviously too big for him. And he's like, "Oh, we have a bike that's in the garage and nobody's using. Let me just give it to him." So you actually stopped him, right? You told God, you said, if he's still there, or if I run across him when I come back home, that I'm going to offer the bike to him. And he was there. You saw him, you offered, but he never came back, correct?
He never did. But, and that just was a lesson for me that, the outcome of our acts of service or kindness is sort of irrelevant. Like God's saying, you have no control over the outcome of what you do. I'm just asking you to keep your own side of the street clean, to do the things I'm asking of you. And you don't worry about the results of that. just be obedient and
Mm-hmm.
and kind, and I'll worry about the rest.
That's so true. And sometimes it's that I know people get really crazy when they think, oh, God talking to me or God said something to me. And you look at them like, what? But you get those little nudges from God that you need to do things. Like, for instance, a couple of months ago, my daughter and I were eating at a town a little bit further away from us, but there was an elderly man. There was something about him that just reminded me of my dad. And I kept hearing the message, pay for his dinner, pay for his dinner. He was sitting by himself. And I was like, nah, this is the first time it's ever really happened that he's actually said, do something. And I'm like, no, no, no. So finally I was like, I can't ignore this. I pulled his waitress over and said, I'd like to pay for his dinner, but don't tell him who did it. And just to be able to watch the sheer joy of knowing that he wasn't alone in this world and that somebody actually cared enough about him to pay. Because, once you get up in the age, a lot of elderly are by themselves in the world. They don't have anybody, family and friends don't check on them, or a lot of their family and friends have died. So just to see the sheer joy in his face was amazing.
Yeah. And that anonymity of it, where it's between you and God, what you did, and there's no recognition. And that's just a beautiful way to serve people, because so much of the time it's sometimes unavoidable that they know who did it, but just to remain anonymous is fulfilling for both people.
So true. And there's sometimes I love a little part in the book. Sometimes we're so stuck on looking for something that we overlook things as well. Like, for instance, you had to go. There was some. I can't remember the exact story in the book, but you had to go to. Your mother-in-law had your car, or you thought your mother-in-law had your car. You know what story I'm talking about?
Oh, I don't remember that one. That one was written a few months ago, probably. I don't remember.
I cannot remember, but do you have your book with you right now, correct?
I do.
Well, while I'm searching for this, would you like to read a part of your book?
Sure. I will. Is there any kind of particular thing that you care to have me read about?
Nope. Anything you want to read.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll read a little bit of the why I write.
Go for it.
Because my book starts with why I write, why they read, and then how to read. I added that gentle, bossy chapter in on this book instead of my first one about how to do it. So I'll read a little bit. So why I write. It's probably fair to say that Let Me Explain is not the most stellar introduction for a book, but I feel like I might as well be upfront with you and tell you that I'm not a real writer. I'm just a girl who started blogging about her leukemia journey and can't seem to stop. In 2015, I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, read abrupt and devastating interruption to life as you know it. And due to a secondary infection, I was intubated in ICU for a week. There were a good number of people who feared I would not wake up, but by the grace of God and some sound medical advice from my husband, Blake, no, he is not a doctor, I did. I woke up feisty and have maintained that fighting spirit ever since. Over a 7-month stretch, I spent 70 days in the hospital. And after the first week, Blake started a blog site so we could update people on my status. And as I began to recover, but while I was still confined to the hospital room for 6 days at a time for chemo, my blog became cathartic in getting me outside of my head. I started to share my fears, struggles, inspirations, and spiritual observations with those who would read. I told on myself about the raw, messy, embarrassing, and often ugly thoughts and feelings I had about what was happening to me and why. Eventually, I was able to find ways to be grateful for what my disease had triggered in me and in my life. My blog went from updating people on the health and healing of my body to reflections on the health and healing of my soul. Do you want me to keep going, or I don't want to take up too much of your time?
However you want to. If you want to keep going, you can keep going. It's up to you.
All right. I have I'll just kind of highlight some of the parts of this. So let's see. Like I said, I didn't see myself as a writer. I had never written anything in my previous cancer life, nor did I want to. So I was confused about people's reactions to them. But my writing itself was not what was inspiring to them. It was the connection they felt to someone who made them feel like they were not alone in their pain, their struggles, their weirdness, if you will. I write a lot about cancer, how I'm affected by others' addictions, and ultimately the universal diseases of the soul. Diseases like worry, fear, control, comparison, and resentment, just to name a few. Apparently, I'm not the only one who has these diseases. I used to worry that when my cancer went into remission, my writing would go into remission with it. But since the diseases of the soul, the common plagues of the heart, as I call them, are chronic, it seems I'll never run out of material. I've proven this to be true since this is now my second book. My first book, Selfie, covers the first 120 blogs I wrote during my leukemia battle, and Selfie #NoFilter covers the aftermath. I'll read this last part. Even though I write about a variety of topics, there is one theme that presents itself in every single entry: me, my soul. I write about what I observe, struggle with, screw up, celebrate, and grieve. I talk about what I believe in with all my heart, what I wish I could believe, and what I'm completely confused by. I touch on territory in my soul that I've come to find out also exists in yours. I love when I hear from someone who identifies with my craziness, because that's the beauty of it. We are not alone in our hurt, our failures, our passions, and our longing to be better than we are today. We're not the only ones. What a relief.
That is so true. And I did find I maybe didn't give you the right context under scary stories when you were making an apple pie and you needed to get cinnamon. You knew you had cinnamon. I was dying. I was like, who in the world has not done this? So tell the story.
Oh gosh, that is so embarrassing. I was making an apple pie. My in-laws were in town and visiting, so our cars were kind of going this way and that. In my mind, I didn't have a car. So I was making apple pie. I needed something from the store. And then I remembered that my in-laws had my car. So I thought, well, I'll just I think I was going to ride my bike to the store. Mm-hmm. So, and then while I was out, I needed my bike to go to the shop or something. No, my bike was at the shop. So I walked to the bike shop, which is by my house, and then rode my bike to the store and came home. But I realized after I came home that in order to pay for my bike, I had gotten my wallet out of my car. I didn't even dawn on me till all of it was done that, oh my gosh, I just got my wallet out of my car so I could have a vehicle oh my gosh. Yeah, that is a scary story.
But who in this lifetime has not done it? It's like you're looking for your cell phone and you're talking.
Yes, where's my phone? Where's my phone?
Where's my phone? And you're talking on it. You're like, wait a second.
Or your sunglasses, that are on your head. Oh no. Yeah, that was embarrassing.
But it was embarrassing, but also I think it's probably the most identifying one, because who in the world has not done that? Even though they may not want to admit it, they were like, oh yeah, because I've done that. I've done the cell phone thing where I'm talking on it, actually talking to my husband. I'm like, I can't find my phone. He's like, aren't you talking to me? I'm like,
yeah. Just testing you to see if you knew. Yeah. And it's such a good life lesson, because that's just, those are the surface things that we do that we're kind of embarrassed to say out loud. And I feel like what I try to divulge in my books without, like you said, throwing other people under the bus. There's a lot of things I could have done to make myself look better and air my grievances, because I had lots of people reading my blog. Mm-hmm. But that's not the point of it is that I'm going to worry about me. So even if I write a lot about resentments, because I went through some hard stuff before and during my leukemia battle that I was pretty angry about, and God just continued to show me ways to turn that over to him, encourage me not to run anyone over with my car. I talk about that a lot. That sounds so bad, but those are thoughts I've had, and I share about it when I'm having them. This wasn't like those weren't past tense. They were things I was experiencing the day I wrote them. And to my surprise, no one stopped reading because of that. Everyone probably keeps reading because I tell on myself.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it's like you said, #NoFilter, because you're not filtering anything you say. It's honest, raw emotions when you're down here. Mm-hmm. And the thick writing. Have there ever been a blog that you're in tears when after you've written it? And it's an emotional release because it's gone. It's out of your system.
Oh yeah. Especially any of them on resentments, for sure. Because I usually start off kind of wound up And that's what makes me think I need to write about it. And then by the end, God's softened me and given me some solutions. I think some of the ones this sounds weird probably, but I read my own books a lot because it reminds me of what I believe and how I'm trying to live, even though I screw it up. Sometimes I'll think, oh my gosh, yeah, I forgot I believe that. I need to stop acting like I don't believe that. You know, it's a reminder to myself to forgive and to let people off the hook and to not tell on other people, to tell on myself instead of telling on other people. One of the things that I think, there's a few of them that I remember that when I got to that last sentence that I thought that I just burst into tears because God would give me this clarity about, one of them was, though the doors were locked. And it's about how Jesus was there and he was there. These people had a friend who was sick. And so they lowered him through the roof. And it talks about Jesus coming to the house, and that it says the phrase, though the doors were locked, that he still came in and presented himself to them. And I think about that for me and for anybody reading, that so much of the time we've locked Jesus out. He's standing at the door and knocking, but that he is going to eventually find his way in. Though the doors were locked, he will continue to pursue us. And that's such a beautiful promise to us.
That is so true. Now, when you're writing these blogs, how long does it take you to write them? Because obviously they're very full of emotion. Some of them are really funny, but some are really full of emotion, full of, a lot of different emotions like anger, resentment, anxiety, all this stuff. And it's a very emotionally heavy.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to write them?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that, actually, because that's the question that I don't get to talk about very much. But the way I write is very, when I say I never wrote anything before cancer, I'm not exaggerating. And it's a very miraculous process, really, because it happens almost the same every time, unless I'm on vacation. But if I'm home, I'm sitting in my living room on my couch, and I have a big basket of books next to me. And I've usually read through a few of them. Sometimes I'm just having a rough day. And so I know that I need to hash things out and reason them out, what I call on paper, which is, and I have an iPad that my mom bought me when I was in the hospital, and a friend of mine bought me a keyboard for it. So it looks like a little computer, and my fingers just fly over that by now. I mean, I can just go 100 miles an hour, and my thoughts are going that way too, which God knows. But so I sit down, I write it. The whole thing is done within, I would say, 45 minutes or less. And the only thing I do after that is read it one more time to make sure there's not spelling errors or repetitive words or something. But I do not overthink it, because if I had to do that, I'd never publish it. God, it's just like a spewing out in one sitting. I'll have like 3 or 4 basic principles maybe I want to talk about. Sometimes I don't even know. I just know that I'm struggling. So once I start typing, God just reveals to me what I'm saying next, and then I edit it and put it out there. If I ever try to do it longer, it's not going to end well. You won't want to read it. You won't want to read that.
I love that. And I also love the fact that I was just going to ask you where your topics come from, because, it's a very diverse topics that you talk about. You talk about some of the funny things, some like really heavy emotional, like we talked about before. And it all started out with cancer, with your leukemia. But is there something like sometimes when you're reading in your Bible, like I know a lot of times I get my creativity when I'm reading the Bible. I'm like, that's me right there. He's talking to me.
Yep.
And has that happened?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes there's a variety of ways. Sometimes it's, I told you I do the daily readings. So it's amazing how many times that every daily reading from a different authors will have the same exact topic. It's like God knew exactly what I needed to hear on that day. And somehow those words, they'll be, the same writing about adversity. That actual word will be in every reading that I pick up. And so, it's very clear that that's what I'm struggling with. And then he's just confirming that's what I'm supposed to write about. The other thing, I believe that God, it wants to be with us and walk with us through the drama, the trauma, and the minutia of everyday life. So some of my stuff is about drama, the relationships, and betrayals or resentments. Some of it's about the trauma, the illnesses, the depression, the COVID, those things. And some of it's about just the minutia of everyday life. So if you've ever seen Seinfeld, they talk about how it's a show about nothing, but it's also really, it's a show about everything. And that's how my blog is. It's that it's a blog about nothing, but at the same time, it's also about everything. So I have, there's one, I think it's in my first book. It's about it's called Squirrels. And it's based on that I was sitting at my couch and there were squirrels playing in a tree across the street, but they used to play in my tree. And I was like, what's up? These squirrels, they're not playing in my tree anymore. I mean, what's wrong with my tree? And so it was just about taking things personal that have nothing to do with us. I was starting to get bent out of shape, but that happens to me in every area of life. So I think if I can pull some lessons from squirrels, then I'm probably got a good amount of material. I just try to observe what's happening around me and look for ways to use it to grow and heal, but also share what I learn with other people who are going through the same.
So what made you decide to turn all these blogs into books?
Well, the first one was, I had kind of been thinking about it. And then there was a man, his name is, I don't know if his name is Ron Bircher. And it was an older gentleman, very successful guy. And he probably couldn't even, I don't think he knew how to get on my site or anything, but he would have his secretary just print it off every time I wrote one and hand it to him. And after a while, maybe he got tired of doing that, but he suggested that I put it in a book format, and he had an editor that his son had used to publish a book. So he connected us, and that was that. And then I did it through Amazon. And then this last time, it's kind of the same thing. I was considering it, and then kind of like how my blog unfolds every time I write, God knows something about me. And that is, I am pretty simple. If I have to work and work and work at it and make it overcomplicated, I'm probably just going to be forget it. So he kind of just lays things in my lap, and he connected me with a publicist who connected me with a publisher. And in 2 conversations, we were off and running to publish a second book. So it's just been kind of a whirlwind. That started in July.
Wow.
And because luckily I had all my posts were already written, so it's not like I had any deadlines about writing anything. It was just more all the hard stuff. I mean, I can write a blog all day long, but figuring out how to, the steep learning curve of publishing and advertising and all that stuff is definitely not in my wheelhouse. So,
well, God placed the people in your life that knew that.
Yeah,
exactly. He knew that book was never going to get written or published. I wouldn't say written because you've already written it, but published without those extra people around. He knows.
Yeah, God knows I need a team. I need a whole team helping me, because I have some very specific sets of skills, and those are not the skills that I have been blessed with. But luckily, other people have that, so I can depend on them to get things done.
I love that. Now let's talk about the first book, Selfie. What was it like when you held it in your hand for the first time and you knew that it was your written words?
I know. Yeah, it's amazing. And the thing I love, this is my first book. And if you can kind of see, I don't know, it's tricky. You can kind of see up close. There's pictures on there. So those are all selfies of all my readers and doctors and nurses at the time when I was going through leukemia, and my family. And I just laugh because, my oncologists are some of the smartest people I know, but they don't really know how to take selfies. And so I would have to get in there with them and take a picture with them and crop them out. But when I designed the book cover, I just told the people at Amazon that I wanted it to look how I wanted to look. And I sent them all the pictures, and they helped me come up with this. And so I have a personal affection, I guess, towards the cover. And then this one, actually I love too, because this is a picture of me, the back of my head, at a Zen garden place in California. I was there with my parents, and they took the picture. And then my daughter, Emma, took this picture and did some graphic design work to it and made it look like it was painted and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I really love that too. And they're just personal. You know, I didn't give it to someone else to design.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very personal.
Now, do you have any idea for another book? Take some more of your blogs and create another book from it?
I think that I have that in me. If this one gains any traction and people are interested, I have probably 50. I ended up cutting about 50 blogs that I was going to put in this book, and that worked out well for a couple reasons. This made this book not quite so long, but also now if I do want to do another one, I have 50 to write before I can do another one, as opposed to starting from scratch. So that was definitely a divine accident that we had to take those out.
I love that. I love that God is already preparing you and setting you up for another book, that you had to take those out.
Yep.
Now, I want to talk about your leukemia, if you don't mind, for those, because I know a lot of people, struggle with cancer and everything.
Yeah.
First of all, how are you doing health-wise?
I'm doing great. I am 6 years out now. So 5 years, as most people know, is kind of the marker. But even with leukemia, you're either done or this is going to sound bad. You're done or you're dead. I mean, there's not a lot of in between with leukemia, because it's so extreme. And that whole experience was such a miracle that we caught it when we did, because I was having a lot of symptoms. We couldn't figure it out. I finally, through a series of miraculous events, got to a doctor on a Friday, and by Friday night, they called me and said, "Here are your numbers. This is indicative of leukemia. We have a bed for you. You need to come to the hospital right now." Wow. So all of a sudden, my life had just stopped. I just got my real estate license. I had young kids at home, and everything was just shut down. And I was in the hospital for 35 days. But when I got there, they said, if you would have come in next week, which was when my original appointment was scheduled, and they somehow, God got me in that Friday, they said you would not have lived till next week.
Wow.
So the window is very small to catch acute myeloid leukemia. And they had them catch it.
So let's talk about how your kids, you said at the time you had small kids. How do your kids feel now that they see have they read any of your books? See, there goes a moment right there, like a space moment.
Yeah. I think they've read bits and pieces of it. It was funny one time, my son, Bennett, he came in when I think I was editing my first book, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just doing some edits for my book." And he goes, "You're writing a book?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You should read it sometime." And he's like, "I don't need to read it. I lived it."
I love that.
And then I said, "Well, you probably should read my book, because I'm way smarter and a way better mom in my book than in real life." So I don't know how much they've read, but they do recommend it to people. I think they're kind of, and I try to not embarrass them too much in my book. I did send my daughter, was having some stresses. She's in college. And so this morning I sent her my blog on Thanksgiving that I wrote a while back, and just to kind of encourage them. So once in a while, I'll send them a blog post just to try to encourage them with better words than I can just come up with on the phone.
And I love that too, because you're not lecturing them. Like, they don't feel like it's a lecture. You're just sending them a link and say, "Hey, you're going through a rough time right now. Read this. Maybe it'll help." Yeah. Instead of you're coming off saying, blah, 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 blah. You know how moms can do. Moms can kind of get involved in the circumstances when they don't mean to, but they can get really into it. And they're like, you're allowing your daughter who's in college to be an adult, but you're still wanting to be there for her. So you're sharing your blog post. I love that.
Well, and the one I was reading, that's the one I needed to read right before it, was called Interference. And it was about how so many times we interfere with God's plans for people, because we're always trying to protect them from pain or shield them from stressors, or get in there and try to fix it, and we're interfering and interrupting what God has got going on by meddling. Sometimes we just need to step back and pray.
Yeah,
especially
and plus,
for adult children.
Yeah. Plus, we kind of interfere with ourselves as well. So that's something that you can take on for in your heart as well. I love that. So I hate that our time is almost up, but do you have one last little nugget before we talk about where people can find you and where they can find the book that you want to share?
I want to encourage people to engage with my site and just really go through some of those categories and reason some things out with God on your own, and know that there's, in my book and other places, you can find my email. It's simple. It's long, but it's simple. Heather Carter soul-selfie @gmail.com. So it's something that, if you want to reach out and say, I'd love to dialogue a little bit or whatever, I'm open to that, especially if you have cancer or know of a friend with cancer or a loved one. This book, I think they're both really helpful, but this one obviously has a little more of the cancer story and some pictures of me with no hair. So it's a good one to give to someone when you don't really know what to do for them to help them. You can get in touch with me. I can get a signed copy to them. I do that all the time. I also will call them if they want to talk to somebody about knowing what it's like to be diagnosed with cancer.
I love that. Especially, I think a lot of people feel like they're so alone in the cancer journey. I've lost 2 close family members. My sister died 27 years ago from lung cancer, and then my dad died in 2015 of what was originally non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but then turned into simple lymphatic leukemia in his last year of his life. So I know the leukemia battle and how quick it can take somebody.
Yes.
But to actually hand that book to someone and say, hey, you're not alone in your journey. This is what someone else is felt like when they were going through it, and you're probably feeling the same things. It's validating them. It's validating their health crisis, what they're going through, all their feelings, all their emotions, and probably validates the family members as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I did a little quick YouTube video a while back. I think someone could find it. And it's just like 5 tips to help somebody how to help a loved one going through cancer. So that's something they can look up on YouTube, probably look up my name and look at that. And it'll send them a 1-page thing about some things like from my perspective as a cancer patient, what I appreciated people did for me.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. Now let's tell people where they can find you at first.
So the heathercarterwrites.com is a great place to go because it has all my blog posts. You can sign up for my new posts if you want the new ones emailed to you. And then you can also order my books through that site. Now, I will tell you, on the 21st of this month, there'll be a 1-day sale for Kindle books for 99 cents just for the 21st. So that's a good time. You can get on and send. No, they're normally $10. So get on and send 10 of them to other people. You can send those Kindle books to people. And then also ordering my book on the 21st would be greatly helpful to me. You can find it on Amazon now, but if you do it on the 21st, I'm just trying to, get a bunch of things on one day so that more people who aren't really looking for me can still find the book and find that encouragement. My goal is just really to get the message of hope to as many people as possible in whatever way possible. So I don't make money on my books per se. I mean, I think this book, people are always like, well, how many have you sold or how much did you make? I'm thinking probably minus. The numbers got a negative in front of it probably because every person I'm like, oh, you're having a struggle of this. Here, have a book. Oh, you have cancer? Here, have a book. Oh, you know anyone with any problem? Here, have a book. So I mostly just give them away because I want people to find that hope. But hopefully with the new book, we can get it out to people besides just people I directly come in contact with.
Is there some reason why you picked out the 21st for it to be on sale?
Nope. Well, we're going to do, actually, I should say that we are doing a little local artist celebration at my office. And I have two other friends that have just written books. One is called Carol's Closet by June Agama, and she writes her memoir. And my friend Lisa Woods, she wrote a great book. It's called When Good Boobs Go Bad, Cut Them Out of Your Life. So that would be a fun person for you to talk to. And then my friend Laura Crater, she just published, she goes to my church and just released a worship album.
Oh, wow.
We're all going to be there together and support each other and celebrate together. And yeah, so that's kind of the reason I chose that date, for people to buy it and just kind of have one big day of celebration.
I love that. I love, first of all, you're supporting others when you're writing your book, because you're showing people that they're not alone. And now you're supporting others by bringing people together that have, experiences they want to share with the world. So I love that. I love that about you, because a lot of people, they think competition over community, but you're thinking community over competition.
Absolutely. Yeah. It can only, it's just like I said, it just gives me an opportunity and them an opportunity to get our message out to more people, because that's really what it's all about. We've all been through it, and we want to share our experience, strength, and hope with people around us. And however we can do that, and supporting each other in that, because the world is very competitive, and not that we're famous, but fame and notoriety can cause division. And that is the opposite of what I believe in.
I love that. So, and you also have, people can find you on Facebook as well, correct?
Yep. I shouldn't say I think, it's Selfie blog. And then all my events, I'm on a few other podcasts, some regular shows that they can listen to if they go there and hear me kind of do what I'm doing with you, unpack some specific blogs and just, dialogue about life.
I love that. So, Heather, I want to thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your journey, sharing your books, your blog. I'm going to go over. I did not hit the subscribe button. I'm going to go over and subscribe now, because I think it's really something that it's going to hit me on days when I really need it. Because you know how God always sends you those messages when you need it the most. It's like right there. You're like, how does he know?
I know. Sometimes you feel like I struggle. My family always teases me that it's like Heather world, revolving around Heather. But when you sit down and you are having a struggle, and 3 things you read all talk about the exact same thing, it's hard not to believe, like, oh, that was, God wrote all those books and dated them all just like that, just for me. And in a way he did, but he does that for you too. He does that for everyone, that he knows he's a master at doing that, of knowing exactly what you need to hear, when you need to hear it. If you're listening for it, he'll tell it to you.
That is so true. And so, Heather, I want to thank you for coming on, for sharing your books, sharing your life, sharing your journey. I can't wait to see where your journey takes you next. Guys, I will put in the show notes everywhere where you can find Heather, where you can find her first book and her second book, because obviously you don't have to read them together. But if you're struggling through even a health crisis, I don't even think it has to be cancer.
Right.
That first one will probably resonate with you more. But if you're going through any crisis of any of the heart, emotional crisis.
Yeah.
Honestly, this right here, this book will make you laugh, cry, and then ponder some things as well. So, Heather, I want to thank you for being on. And guys, thank you for listening and watching Chats from the Blog Cabin. Be blessed. And most importantly, keep chatting. See you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.